All right, let's dive into one of the most fascinating paranormal mysteries
Hmm.
we've ever covered, Borley Rectory. The most haunted house in England, they called it. A history that'll send shivers down your spine.
Yeah, and the stories they span over 70 years. Generations of people encountering the unexplained ghostly nuns, phantom coaches, mysterious sounds. It's almost as if the house itself is like a portal or something.
I know, right? And when you think about it, the physical structure was built back in 1863, hidden nooks, creepy courtyard, and of course the nuns walk.
Oh, yeah. It's like straight out a gothic novel, just begging for a good ghost story. And then there's those local legends, too, plague victims buried in the garden underground tunnels.
Oh, yeah. And we can't forget the forbidden love story. The nun and the lay brother ending with her bricked up alive in the walls.
That's a story that really captures the imagination, doesn't it? Speaks to that fear of being trapped. No wonder people connect it with Borley's haunting.
Right. And speaking of strange events, started almost right away. The Reverend Henry Dawson Ellis Bull and his family moved in 1863. Big family, at least 14 kids, all living under one roof with that nun legend already circulating.
Do you think maybe knowing about the legend beforehand changed their experiences? Like going in expecting something, maybe they were more likely to see ordinary things as paranormal.
That's a good point. It's like priming yourself for the unusual. And there were definitely some unusual things. Imagine hearing all 20 of the rectory bells ringing at once in the middle of the night. No explanation. No one pulling the ropes.
That's classic haunted house stuff, isn't it? Like a signal almost. Do you think it was intentional, something trying to communicate, or just random energy?
Ooh, that's a good question. And it wasn't just bells either. One of the daughters, Ethel, she said she saw a tall, dark man in her bedroom and even woke up to something slapping her face.
That's different though, isn't it? More personal. Like whatever it was interacting with them, picking specific people.
And these weren't just one-time things either. Decades of reports, like when three of Reverend Bull's daughters saw the nun coming back from a garden party in 1900.
Yeah, multiple witnesses seeing the same thing, that's hard to explain away. It gives it more weight.
Absolutely. More than just someone's imagination. But things got even more interesting when Reverend Bull passed away in 1892. His son Harry took over. Now Harry, he was different. He loved the paranormal, talked openly about the hauntings.
It's like he was proud of it almost. That change from one generation to the next, it's interesting. Do you think because he was so open, others felt okay sharing their own experiences? Or maybe it made them think they saw things?
It's something to think about.
Hmm.
And Harry's stories, they're some of the most compelling. He'd stay up late in the summer house trying to communicate with spirits. He even claimed he saw the nun himself and a headless man in the garden.
Headless figures, why are they always in ghost stories? The lack of a face, maybe? It's unnerving.
Yeah, I think so. It's that fear of the unknown, you know?
Right. And the phantom coach and horses, too. Another common one. What do you think that represents? A journey, maybe, between the living and the dead.
Good question.
Mm.
Harry said he heard the sounds of hooves and wheels even when there was nothing there.
Spooky. The things you can't see are always scarier.
Totally. And Harry wasn't the only one who felt uneasy at Borley. Mrs. W. Newman, the cook, she had an experience with a door.
Ah, yeah, when things move on their own. Classic haunting. Makes you feel vulnerable, like something's watching you.
Exactly. Every night she'd lock both doors to her room, one to the bathroom passage and one to the pair room. Every morning the pair room door would be wide open. No explanation.
No logical explanation. That's what makes it scary, the unknown. And what's interesting is even the Bull family had different opinions about the hauntings. Harry's brother Walter said he heard footsteps outside, but swore nothing ever happened inside.
It's like he drew a line, right?
Yeah.
Outside, okay, inside, no way. Like he felt safer that way.
Interesting. And then you have another brother, Gerald, he said the nun was just imagination. Shows how subjective these things are. What one person thinks is a ghost, another dismisses.
It's a good reminder that there's no one answer when it comes to the paranormal. Everyone brings their own experiences to the table, you know?
For sure. And Borley, with all its activity over so many years, it's a case that really makes you think.
Yeah, it's like history and mystery all rolled into one. And we've only just scratched the surface.
There's a lot more to unpack here. It really does seem like every corner of that place was ready to give you a scare. And it wasn't just the family either. Visitors, even the next reverend, they had their own stories.
That's what's so crazy. Not just one or two people, tons of witnesses across decades. There's this one guy, Mr. Harley, he was a friend of Harry Bull's, always felt like someone was watching him.
That feeling of being watched, that's super common in hauntings, isn't it? Like something's there even if you can't see it. Some people think it's just your senses being heightened. because you're in a place with a spooky reputation.
Like, your mind is on high alert, picking up on things you wouldn't normally notice. But at Borley, with all the stories you've already heard, your brain interprets things differently.
Exactly. And what's interesting is Mr. Harley never said it felt evil or anything, more like curious, still creepy but not threatening.
Right. Makes you wonder, what was it doing? Just curious or something more? Remember Harry told Mr. Harley if he didn't like the next reverend, he'd come back and throw mothballs.
Oh, yeah, and then after Harry died, people said mothballs were being thrown around. Who knows if it was real or just people messing around?
I love that. It makes it so hard to figure out what really happened. Was it Harry's energy or people playing a prank? Blurs the lines.
Absolutely. And there was another thing Harry told Mr. Harley. Saw a man in the conservatory vanish into thin air.
That's always weird, right? Vanishing ghosts. Like they're on a different level of reality just passing through.
It makes you question what's real, doesn't it? Appearing and disappearing like that. Maybe
Yeah.
they exist on a different frequency or something. Only we see them sometimes.
Whoa, that's trippy. And it wasn't a secret either. Harry talked about the nun with other people too. Clergymen, even a guy named Mr. Ferrance. Told him the nun followed him all the way from the churchyard to the front door.
He really wasn't afraid to talk about it, was he? Not hiding it or anything? Do you think he truly believed it, or was he trying to figure it out?
Good question. And it goes against that idea that people always keep these things quiet. But some people say he was just seeing things because he was so into the supernatural.
That's what skeptics always say, right? But you got to look at all the stories from all the different people over the years, not just Harry.
Right. And another thing skeptics say, no one saw the nun after the Bull family left. But that's not true at all. There are tons of reports of a nun-like figure, even multiple people seeing her at the same time.
See, that's important.
Mm.
Means it wasn't just tied to the family. Maybe the location itself has something to do with it, like the land or the building is holding on to something.
That's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
But it also brings us back to those different viewpoints within the family. If it was the place, why did some experience things and others didn't? Like Walter, remember. Footsteps outside, but nothing inside.
Maybe some people are just more sensitive to it or more open to believing in it, like a spectrum of how we perceive things.
Yeah, and then you have Gerald saying the nun wasn't real. It shows how everyone experiences these things differently. What's a ghost to one person is nothing to another.
Shows how subjective it all is. Our own beliefs and experiences, they shape how we see the world, especially when it comes to things that are hard to explain.
And Borley, with all the different things that happened, it's a really complex case. Not just one type of haunting, but all kinds of weird stuff, apparitions, sounds, objects, moving that feeling of being watched.
That's what makes it so interesting, right? It's not a simple ghost story. It's all tangled up and keeps people guessing.
It's like a puzzle, but you can't put all the pieces together. But those missing pieces are part of what makes it so fascinating. Leaves room for us to think and wonder,
Definitely. And it asks a big question, what do we do with these experiences? Do we try to explain them away, or do we admit there might be things we just don't understand?
And maybe that's the biggest takeaway from Borley. It forces us to question what we know and be open to the mystery of it all.
Reminds us that the world is full of crazy stuff, things we know and things we don't. And maybe the best answers come from the questions themselves.
So we've gone through all these crazy stories from Borley, firsthand accounts, different experiences. But the big question is, what does it all mean?
Right. After all the investigations, the pictures, the witnesses, we still don't have a clear answer. And that's what keeps people so fascinated with this story.
It's like the ultimate unsolved case in the paranormal world.
Yeah.
But even without answers, Borley has changed how we think about hauntings.
Yeah, it's become the example, the standard. So
Yeah.
much activity for so long, no easy explanation. It made its mark. Like, this is what a real haunting looks like.
And what's always gotten to me is that this all happened to a normal family. The Bulls. Not ghost hunters or anything, just everyday people living their lives, and suddenly they're dealing with something totally unexplainable.
That makes it relatable, right? Not like they were looking for attention or anything. Just a family with different personalities and opinions trying to figure out what was going on around them.
And that makes me think, if it could happen to them, could it happen to anyone? You know those creaky sounds in your house? The shadows that move out of the corner of your eye? That sudden chill? Are we just ignoring it, or is there something more there?
That's the question Borley makes us ask. Makes us look at the world differently and be open to the idea that there are things we don't understand.
It's like a warning almost. The world is way weirder than we think.
Yeah, the line between what we know and what we don't know, it's not as clear as we like to think.
Exactly. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Borley Rectory, I want you to think about this. What if we stopped trying to explain everything? What if we just accepted the mystery, let ourselves be amazed by what we don't know, and consider there might be more out there than we can even imagine?
Maybe by being open to the unknown, to that sense of wonder, we can actually learn more about ourselves and the universe.
Until next time, keep exploring the unexplained, and don't be afraid to question what you see, even in the shadows.